And when I was at first aid, there was a bunch of rough and tumble type industry guys in the class, and all of a sudden they were talking about asking each other if they were doing some kind of bike ride for charity the next day, and how it was to provide toys for kids. And I was listening and feeling like, wow, that is really attractive. And I do need to work on a little bit more humor. Yesterday night I was laughing with my mom over accidentally texting that person that I had to pee when I meant to text her, and it felt like such genuine, joyful laughter, and I really had a sense that I hadn't connected with that in a long time. And I've been giggling to myself a little bit more lately too about silly things. So practicing humor, that sounds weird, practicing. And when I was at first aid yesterday, a joke came to mind, and I don't really know how the joke goes or the real punchline, but it was something along the lines of how when I went to use the washroom, the toilet paper was the worst toilet paper ever. It was in one of those Kimberly-Clark rolls, and it's 1-ply and like sandpaper. And I was thinking, the irony is I'm taking a first aid class and I'm gonna need some first aid on my cucaracha after using this toilet paper because it's so rough. That's not really a proper joke with a punchline, but for some reason it came into my mind, so I may as well share things like that. My attempt to get my sense of humor back, because this last year has not been that funny. And that's something that I want back. It's something that hospitalization last April took away from me, and I want it to be safe for me to laugh again. That's something else I wanted to say about cognitive remediation. And cognitive remediation is a particular thing, but getting cognition back in general. And I'm wondering if micronutrients might help people to get cognition back by tapering off meds and going into micronutrients. So I never lost that much cognition because I haven't been on long-term antipsychotics. But for the people who have, will micronutrients help people to get some of that cognition back? And I think it might be possible, because I remember hearing Tony Stephan speak about micronutrients, the EMP product, which isn't the one I take, but somebody did a study in rats, and this is really mean, but they did a study where they cut out a part of a rat's brain, and they had this activity where the rat had to be in water, and then there was one little platform that they needed to find in order to get the cheese or something. And when they initially cut out the rat's brain, they couldn't find the platform and do the task very fast. But they gave these rats micronutrients, and after a certain period of time, the rats that had their brain cut out and then they took micronutrients performed better at the task than rats that never had their brains cut out at all that didn't take micronutrients. So in terms of getting cognition back, with this rat study, I feel like it's possible that even if we lose a lot of our cognition, if we take micronutrients, we can get it back. If the rats can get it back, then we can get it back. And I'm just thinking in hopeful terms. Saying that doesn't help me. I don't have that struggle. I'm thinking of struggles that other people have. I can continue to afford micronutrients because I do work a bit and things like that, but I'm going to try to see if I can get it funded, to see if it will be funded, and then share that with people to remove the financial barrier for other people. And if it's not, why the heck can we not have micronutrients funded if they do work? And at the same time, if I'm able to prevent crisis in myself for 9 months, showing, hey, they do work. Here's the studies that show they work. Here's the studies that show they help with the brain neurodegeneration and they help with malnutrition. And here is my personal experience. So why the hell can we not have it funded? Especially if it allows people to have better quality of life, for God's sakes. So the things that I'm doing related to mental health right now aren't for my own sake. I could say sayonara to it right now, but I still feel called to investigate. I feel called to see what happens. I don't need to go back to my psychiatrist right now, but I'm going to see what I can help design for other people to make this path a little easier financially and whatever else. And maybe at some point when I am ready to go on my mobile creative lifestyle, I'll feel like I've done all I can do to help other people who are struggling with this same challenge that I've had, and maybe advocate to remove the barriers for people being able to go through a process like this if they want. If I'm able to advocate for people getting micronutrients funded if they want to transition to micronutrients, doesn't mean people have to transition to micronutrients. It means that if they want to, then there's no financial barrier. Just like they do a lot in the government to remove the financial barrier for people taking medications. There's Plan G, where the government funds the medication if one is a low-income earner. There is medication costs covered if one is on disability. There are so many options for getting medications covered. Well, what about if micronutrients work? Getting those covered. I can't remember if I said this, but I'll say it again anyways. The other night when I was making a video at night and saying I was feeling a moment of blah, I got an email from a friend that said, "You are a living work of art." And I thought that was a really sweet testimonial. And I wonder what'll happen if I stay in this state of flow and action for the next 6 months. And I think I'm going to buy the domain Synchronicity or Synchronicity Wellness and make some business cards or something. So I'm wondering if the mental health paradigm can be changed from the current paradigm to one of understanding that we're malnourished, that we don't have the nutrition to deal with this overstimulation, this world that is information overload for us now. And we become hypersensitive to a world that we're not adapted for in the first place. So perhaps we need even more nutrition than what we got in food 100 years ago when the soil was still really rich and giving us a lot of different minerals. Perhaps we're all developing nutrient dependencies because the soil no longer has the nutrition. And people argue about this stuff all the time, but I'm wondering because I'm going based on my own personal experience. And I wonder if mental illness, so-called mental illness, can be reduced by 80%, if 80% of it is indeed nutritional, as Dr. Abram Hoffer said. And one thing I was playing with this morning was this idea that even getting into really good shape or having a good body doesn't take very much time. Because I was thinking about how when I go into a state of so-called mania, and I have in the past, I'm immediately so much stronger. It's not like I have to work out and then slowly I get that strong. All of a sudden I'm stronger, I'm more flexible, all of these things. So I was thinking about, and I thought of this after how I did a spoonk session, which is one of those acupressure mats. I did one the other night, and then when I woke up in the morning, my spine didn't click as much when I was doing bedroom yoga, which I learned from Carol Maureen Friesen at the Lightworker Institute, or Lightworkers Institute. So this morning I did the spoonk for about a minute, and then I did neck traction, which is something that one can get from a chiropractor, for about a minute. And I was thinking about how maybe doing some of these things for just a few seconds or a minute is like reminding the body of the blueprint so it can move naturally in that way throughout the day. So not forcing the body by doing 20 minutes of this and half an hour of this and an hour of this, but just the gesture of the reminder of that. So doing a couple seconds of this, a couple seconds of that, just to remind the body so it can do what it does naturally. Because we generally think we have to force everything. We have to work out, we have to do all this stuff to force the body. Even the Muse headband, sit and be quiet for 20 minutes or an hour to force the mind to be calm. When perhaps something like coherence breathing reminds the body how to breathe, and then the body naturally goes in a cycle of alertness and then calmness, and then alertness and then calmness. Noticing something and then calm, and then noticing the next thing and then calm, because we're always going to be noticing something. But if we're calm in each spot in between that, maybe that's more powerful than forcing calmness. But learning to coherence breathe does take a little bit of time, but maybe even that, doing 1 minute of coherence breathing a day instead of 20, and that's something I could try. I'll do a little bit more. I want to see if I can stay in the coherence breathing, but maybe after that, I could design a 1 minute of each thing station, or 2 minutes. I'm thinking of designing in 2 minutes of spunk, 2 minutes of traction, a minute of the head tingler that I have, but I don't have that with me right now. I have a lot of these little tools that I could design in 20 minutes of different 1 minute stations, which are all gestures towards the body of caring and love and acknowledgement and being embodied and remembering the body and how important it is to our journey, to our quest, but not forcing it in any one direction. And maybe some days the body will want more of one station. I just made that idea up now. I kind of like that for my center of creativity that I want to create. And it's communicating to the body. It's the activation energy, but not the practice, not the forcing, not using conscious will to overdo it in any particular area. So we're harvesting, we're creating, and we're blueprinting, we're re-blueprinting, we're re-imprinting, and acknowledging that the body can put us in that place of strength at any moment, which is usually inversely related to the strength of the self. So as the strength of the psychological self decreases, the strength of the body increases. And it's a shift, it's a mutation, it's something that happens in an instant. I'm walking and thinking about a couple things. One of them is the act of walking, and how what I'm doing right now, walking through a forest, something as old as humanity itself. And when we go into altered states of consciousness, mob consciousness, mania, so-called psychosis, elements of the collective unconscious of all of humanity since the beginning of time of humanity can arise in consciousness and be disorienting. So how I'm equating this is doing something physical, something that the body is used to since the dawn of humanity, like walking through a forest, could be a way to ground some of that, because the mind and the psyche is wanting to go back 1,000,000 years. So by doing something the body, the human body, has been doing for 1,000,000 years, it could be a way to acknowledge that timeline. We do so much with our time nowadays that the human body and being and psyche and mind has only been doing for 10 years, 20 years, 1 year, 2 years, 50 years. Such a short period of time in our whole history. And then in map consciousness, the whole of human history can come into consciousness. So by doing something as old as human history, it could calm down the psyche and calm down the body and calm down the brain cells and the cells and all the physiology. I'm not sure if that's true, but something that just came to mind. There's something else I realized besides the fact that these pants are too warm and too tight for walking in the forest when it was cold earlier, but now it's kind of warm. And I realized when I was editing a video that physiology and biomechanics changes chemistry. So the physiology and biomechanics of breathing coherently changes body chemistry. So the natural physiology of breathing, which is a biomechanical action, changes the body chemistry. It changes oxygenation, which would have a whole cascade of chemical reactions. So then I realized that this physiology and biomechanics together, changing chemistry, is related to the term I created for myself, which is epigestretics. So I'm seeing right now that epigestretics is a combination of physiology, biomechanics, and the action of meaning, which is very subtle. So for example, somebody smiling is a physiological, biomechanical thing. And then if I see someone smile, that acts through the mirror neuron system in the brain and gives me the meaning of somebody with a happy and friendly gesture towards me, which then produces oxytocin. So I can recognize the meaning of that biomechanical, physiological action, the meaning of it, me seeing it, seeing the meaning, creates a chemical, oxytocin. This is a very simple example. But this is how these gestures of meaning are translated, and they're not separate. It's a flow of meaning. So the physiological, biomechanical action of breathing means that I'll get oxygen. So there's a meaning for humans in the molecule oxygen itself. So it's all one process. So this physiological, biomechanical meaning, all tied in together, translates into other meaning. It can translate into internal chemistry, just like the action of breathing gives oxygen, which produces energy in the body. So it's all one movement, and then we divide it up into these separate sciences. But this is part of epigesturing oneself into other ways of being, other ways of living. It's access to a different field, a different flow of meaning than the meanings of our memorized thoughts. One can see new meaning instead of everything being translated according to old meaning. And the new meaning is what is inspiring. It gets us to breathe deeper and gain more oxygen. So meaning gives energy. If something has a lot of meaning, it doesn't matter how tired we are, we can act on it because it gives us energy.
Darn it, I dropped my headphones. Another mistake.
I think I said this the other day, where it feels sort of like being disturbed by perfection. And then I drew a wisdom card from my wisdom power deck. And I haven't done that in a while. And can I allow things to be that good? And the card I drew was this one. And it says, move into that place of perfection within you, that place of truth, responsibility, competence, and intuition. Collect your discipline like a Buddha meditating in a garden of snow. Impeccability is an area of strength that continues to flame within, maintaining your power and intent. This flame burns in your center always, indicating the level of your capabilities and your effectiveness in bringing events into being. Impeccability is tended by the attentions of your sacred witness, that person within you who observes the target. Gather your power with impeccability, with the intensity of a rubber band pulled and held at its breaking point. Gather your intent and focus on your impeccability for the job about to be done. And I thought that was poignant. Right now I feel disturbed, not really disturbed by perfection, so it's interesting that I was talking about that at this moment. Halfway through my second lap on my walk, my pants were rubbing on my legs. I haven't worn those pants in a long time. I have these jeans and they're a lot looser than usual, so I thought I would wear some pants that were a little less loose, and it was bugging me so much. It felt so annoying. I might go back to the park now that I'm wearing looser pants. And I just shuffled the deck and decided to draw a card for today, and oddly enough, I just drew that, and I just said disturbed by perfection, and here it is. Dream your passion, fly away, go through the hoop of your innermost fears and desires, meet them and conquer them. What pain from childhood have you not dealt with? Move into the wound of your most secret fears and find the seeds of wisdom that are planted there. Face what upsets you most. It is a great teacher. Give away whatever is holding you back. Insecurities, ego, fear of failure, or of not being loved, fear of being alone, and be reborn into a new state of perfection. I haven't had any rice since my cleanse started over 2 weeks ago, but now that I'm going to donate blood in 2 days, I'm eating some rice to make sure I'm over 110 pounds. But it's making me feel kind of gross. I think I just feel weird right now after those rubbing pants and getting a little bit too hungry or something. I'm not sure. I feel like I want a kombucha. It occurred to me to put one of my stickers that I created on my vitamin pack. Does anyone remember what that says? $100 to the first person who remembers.